Awesome.
All right,
Well,
recording has started. Parasa, if you want to call us to order.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. Parasa Chanramy, YDC Chair, and I call this Executive Committee meeting to order at on May 22nd at 12:34 p.m.
thank you, Barisa.
You, Parasa. I'll do a quick roll call of our executive committee. Parasa Chanramy,
Aye.
Tavidi Lewis, Molly Rogers, and Jeff Parker. So for right now, it looks like it's just you, Parasa. We'll carry on. Thank you.
Well, and Parisa, I think I'll take it kind of from here. We want to go through the agenda. Cord, appreciate your being here. I think we kind of any director's update things that we're I think all aware of, but I'll say out loud like real quickly in a few minutes here, I'll sort of su- talk about how I think we want to make some adjustments to this just being really an agenda focused review. But we have some other ideas about kind of committee structure, so we'll get to those in a second. We are recording this meeting so that those who want to listen to it later can check in and check to our website and kind of see what we're covering, see what's on our agenda, not only for what we're talking about right now, but for the quarterly meeting that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So just appreciate your being here, Parsa. And I don't see any members of the public, but if we do see some, we'll have some time for public comment. The only other, before I get to kind of our quarterly meeting agenda, is the forecast, economic forecast for the state came out. There's certainly some news there for all of us, I think, to be paying attention to around the corporate activities tax revenue being less than what was forecasted last uh, quarter. I think they're quarterly. Maybe they're twice annually. I can't remember. Are they quarterly? Is there a quarterly forecast? But nonetheless, that may have some impacts on will have impacts on Student Success Act funded programs and grants. Exactly what that impact is going to be, can't say, but it's probably important to note that our re-engagement grants are funded through that broader Success Act, which is funded by the corporate activities tax. So we'll continue to watch and monitor and are just thinking internally about what that and that's having some internal conversations about what potentially that might mean. Um, I think more broadly in the economic forecast, I think there's some reduced revenue projections. So there too, we will see what, if any, impact that has on our agency budget, on our grant and aid dollars more specifically. But again, I don't have anything specific to say about that, but we're certainly in regular communication and conversation with the governor's office and our advisors there, and also with the Department of Education because our budget sits there just about what uh, steps or just even thinking needs to happen as we start to navigate. And of course, the legislature makes the final decision. So we'll um, do our best to be in communication with the legislative fiscal office folks as they either have questions for us or as if we hear anything about direction, we'll be on top of that. So I don't know. That's director's update as far as I'm concerned. Probably we'll say something similar at our quarterly meeting. But Parsa, any thoughts or questions from you on that?
Um, I, I appreciate us being able to share an update on the revenue forecast and how that potentially shapes budget prioritization. A wondering I have is um, if we have any information on um, how the governor's office would be approaching budget prioritization, given what was laid out in the governor's recommended budget, now with the latest revenue forecast. Um, what are some of the key questions that are being asked of agency directors in prioritizing the investments? And I don't know. That's why I'm just going to put it out there. um,
Yeah,
yeah.
we talked to our advisor the other day, and they haven't come to us with a specific question. And as far as the governor's priorities, um, I don't have new information about like sort of how they're thinking about that or how they're um how 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 a prioritization necessarily would or direction from them. What
Mhm.
what I can say, I guess, is for us, it does seem important to prioritize kind of the direct service funding. Um, so if there were reductions that we would have to uh, have or take, we would say, okay, well, we've got some, not much, but we've got some grant making that we do that is the vast majority is directly serving youth and families. There's some, say, in re-engagement where we've got some collaborative grants. Um, so if we had to make some hard decisions around any reductions, we'd probably prioritize the direct service grants. And certainly, we're also all of us weighing any federal funding decisions that may happen, which we don't have new information on either, but we're certainly doing our best to both
Mhm.
lift up the fact that we've got Title 20 funds that come through the social services block grant and Title II funds, which are ultimately from the Department of Justice and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Office. So yeah, Parsa, we can, we got a couple weeks between now and our meeting, and if there's, like I said, information we get or hear, or we can ask the governor's office too if they have more specific questions that they're um, using to kind of make decisions and or
Yeah,
priorities, we can certainly share.
absolutely. Yeah, I think um, if if there are sort of new developments in that conversation before the quarterly meeting, that could be helpful for council members to be aware of, so that we know if there's if where there are adjustments to be made in what we're requesting in this budget cycle, just so that folks have the latest information, and then just naming the federal uncertainty, um, or as we get more information around title funds. I know for school districts, we've heard like flat funding down in the next cycle. We've just heard a variety of things, and so just I feel like any helpful information we can give, or even just naming, like, there are certain things that are just unknown at this point.
Oh yeah.
Um, and that, being able to have the council be up to speed on that could be really helpful, as we're, you know, the RFA process, right? There's informational out there. I'm sure there's a lot of questions from potential grantees as well, that are continuing to emerge because there are so many things that are up in the air and changing every day.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
say quickly, for us to not to forget, we don't have any big policy or legislative asks, other than we do want to have our permanent, or sorry, our limited duration position is funded through Future Ready, moving to being a permanent position. There are a couple of other bills that name us, But I think those bills, well, we'll see if those bills make it through. So I feel like we're pretty clear and have been clear with the governor's office around our priorities, which are not big fiscal asks. They carry some fiscal implication, but they're not big. And back to the like our grant and aid funding, we'd love to see that. Well, we'll wait and see what the grant and aid picture looks like.
My hope is like preserve core services, right? We're able to try to do as much as we can to maintain the roll-up costs of the re-engagement grants, knowing that the CAT revenue is down. So that's my hope, but I know there's a lot of things that are outside of our control right now.
You bet. All right, I'm going to move us to just a quick agenda review so we can walk through that since we've got about 15 minutes left. Though, Cord, Melissa, was there anything you wanted to add on that topic, just around legislation and so on? No?
No, I mean, I was maybe curious, Parsa, if you've got any insight. 3199, which is, I think, kind of became the omnibus literacy bill. I haven't seen any movement. It's in Joint Ways and Means, and that is one where we're just named in it as part of a advisory commission of just different agencies around attendance. I thought that bill might have a chance of getting through. I don't know what kind of fiscal it has, and I wondered if that's one you're watching and if you've heard anything because I haven't seen any movement.
Yeah, so the latest information I have about House Bill 3199 is we are trying to get an amendment in the Ways and Means process, which is really rare, right? And in my conversation with Rep. Wen's team, and we've also been working with the Department of Education on that. We have some small technical language we would want to have amended, but in order to
Mm,
change a policy in the Ways and Means
mm,
process, we have to get the presiding officers on board and the co-chairs and the ed sub chairs. So that's where it's at right now. If we are able to get that policy change, it reduces the fiscal to about 500,000, um,
mm,
which would allow it to ideally move really quickly through the process. But with so many things that are up in the air, we're just not sure right now. But that's at least the latest on the policy because we're hoping that that change goes through to kind of shake it out of this
mm,
Ways and Means process. But we'll see. We're not sure. I think there's a lot of the bills. They're trying to figure out what their fate is
mm,
as we get ready to wrap up the session. But I think the revenue forecast was it was really disheartening to see that and see what potentially is in the horizon. And so I anticipate a lot of efforts to just what are we doing to protect core services, ensuring that our dollars go as far as they can go. Um, and I was hoping that there'd be some conversation around tapping into reserves, but I don't think that's likely in this session
mm,
because there's at least some conversation around how, preparing for a situation that is even more dire when it comes to
Mhm.
the budget. So, yeah.
No, that makes sense. Thanks.
yep.
That's helpful insight on that bill.
Awesome. All right, Melissa's gonna
We have
share.
someone joined by phone, I should know.
Oh, good. Thanks. I will ask if this is just a guest or one of our council members.
It's Molly.
Hey, Molly. Welcome.
I'm just
Hey,
traveling. Yep.
Molly.
Thanks for joining, Molly. We're gonna just run through our draft agenda for the meeting here in a couple weeks, and we were talking just a little bit about kind of revenue forecast and legislation here over the last few minutes. Um, I'm going to keep going forward. Says we've got about 12 minutes left. Melissa has her screen shared, but I'll try to make sure, Molly, you're aware of what we're talking about. This is our draft agenda. We're meeting is again, well, Brian Detman for the record, YDO director. June 12th, Thursday, June 12th is our meeting. This is a 4 hour meeting, 10 to 2, not 10 to 1. We have um, our last meeting, our March meeting was 10 to 1. This one's 10 to 2. We've chosen to, we're thinking of trying to do something in Central Oregon, but those plans didn't come to fruition. So Northwest Youth Corps down in Eugene, Jeff Parker's organization is going to be the location of that meeting. We will have a virtual link, but we strongly encourage folks to show up in person. We've got some activities planned, which I'll go over here in a sec, just to kind of build some connection and relationship since we have a little bit more time. So we want to start things off with a little icebreaker activity. Just so we, again, Molly and Parsa, you were both there at our March meeting in Salem, where we've got some new folks. So we want to have a little opportunity for a little more get to know you. We've got a couple questions. Probably encourage folks to in this room to break into groups of three or four or something like that, just to talk about what expertise and experience you bring to the council. What questions are you wondering about for today's meeting or the council in general? Try to have those conversations happen with maybe one or two of the newer, and then one or two of folks who've been on the council for, a couple of years or a term or two. So we'll do our best, and then we'll have an online group as well. So that'll start from about 10 to, I don't know, 10:20 or so. That's my guess. We'll dial in the times here as we move forward. But that's how we'll start. Then we'll do a more formal welcome and kind of my director update, but also just walking folks through the agenda, making some announcements about new members. At least two folks, Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, a Roseburg person,
Daniela Avila will
Daniela
have joined us
Davila
by then.
hopefully will be well, she's actually official.
Mhm.
Molly made a great connection to Jeff Justison, who's a county commissioner in Wasco County. His candidacy has not been officially he's not been officially appointed, but our fingers are crossed for that happening at the end of this month. And then so at our June meeting, we can announce the two of them. And then we have the two or three, I can't remember exactly the number of folks who we announced at the last meeting. So we've got some new faces and some great new energy. So do that. And then want to talk a little bit about kind of committees. I think we're excited about getting things going this summer and fall around committees. We want to move this meeting that we're having today to just a very specific agenda review meeting. Um, if I've got Parsa, you and Molly here, Molly Tabiti wasn't able to join because there's a personal appointment that he needed to attend to, but I don't know that we have a very active executive committee. I don't necessarily want to make you all have another committee meeting to have to attend, but I do find real value in having a conversation about the agenda, get your input, get your questions, get your like, wait a minute, Brian, what does that mean? So I still want to call this a agenda review meeting. I think we can use executive session in some ways as we need to bring um, just council folks together to talk about um, specific issues. Like, we could use an executive session in our quarterly meeting where it's not members of the public to really get into a hard topic if and as needed. But I kind of think the idea of an executive committee. I'm not opposed to it. So if somebody wants to push back, tell me. But I don't know that that it's a super active thing, at least in this moment. We can always revisit that. I'll just say a few more words just so you all can then ask me questions or tell me what you think. But I know that our Juvenile Justice Committee is active and going, so we obviously want to maintain that. Appreciate your leadership on that, Molly. We're going to get our youth together and kind of trying to rekindle the youth committee, reconvene. We're pushing for a meeting to happen here in the next couple of weeks. We're actually not going to call it a committee meeting, and we're going to call it a youth engagement meeting because we've got a bunch of people who we want to bring together just to sort of start to formulate a plan about a more active committee going forward. But again, trying to get that up and going. Then we have an idea around a committee that we would call the Policy and Strategy Committee, something that could get going this summer-ish, but really be helping to drive the strategies and plans around the strategic plan, the strategies and activities of the strategic plan. Also talk as we get into either short session or long session about policy issues. So we came up with this idea of just a policy strategy committee. I mentioned youth committee. We can have other work groups as we need. Those, just as a reminder, Parsa, you as the chair get to say yes or no to a work group. So I do need to pass, according to our bylaws, we do need to pass work groups, have the approval of the chair. And the last thing I'll say, and want your, again, reactions and thoughts. We only have 5 minutes left, but this is pretty hefty part of the meeting. We will do some kind of survey following the YDC meeting to get to express either affirm that you're a part of this committee or interest in a committee, again, since we have some new folks and want to make sure they're assigned. So those are some new slash probably old ideas around committees, but I'm both excited, but also realize like it's time to get some of those committees off the ground and of course affirming that Juvenile Justice Committee is going strong. So I don't know if you have any questions or thoughts there.
Thank you so much for that overview, Brian. One thing that I'm wondering about for that portion on calling a vote, essentially, for the committees. That action will be like laid out in the formal agenda that gets posted, right? Or
That's a great question. I hadn't thought about whether or not whether we should or could vote. I was kind of I'm sort of posing it as I don't know, updated slash revised structure, but it probably does deserve or warrant some kind of vote. So maybe we need to put it as its own. You're making a great point, Parsa. We'll probably then need to have it
I'm
as a
not sure that's why
standalone
I'm
agenda.
asking the question.
Yeah, Molly, I don't know if you have any thoughts as you're driving. If we're going to formally adopt this structure, it's a bit of a morph of things we've done in the past. It's not entirely new, but this policy strategy committee thing would be new, but the other pieces I think are a continuation of
Like, or
yeah,
within an existing committee. Yeah.
yeah. Molly, you came off mute.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I guess I would like a little bit more before we're presenting it to the council, is maybe even a couple of bullet points or charter almost for the policy and strategy group.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's too if it's too abstract, people aren't going to understand and want to participate in it. And I think that's why the Juvenile Justice Committee is so active, is we're very, very concrete. Yeah.
Good point, Molly.
So
we can be more specific, have some bullets and I'll say quickly, there is, within a committee that is formed, we do want it to have its own clear charter, and juvenile justice does. youth committee sort of does loosely, but I think it needs to be revisited. So yes, I can come up with some bullets, but also yeah, want to say, hey, let's have something written.
Yeah, they'll come up with it on their meetings when they start meeting
Yep.
as well. The other part is you asked about the executive committee
Yeah, what
and
do you
the
think,
agenda
Molly?
planning committee.
Yeah.
So I actually we're a public body, so I think there's all sorts of rules.
Yeah.
So I think it's totally fine just to have this be the agenda planning meeting
Yeah. Yeah.
and invite the chairs of the committees together, because this really isn't acting as an executive committee, which is
Yeah.
absolutely perfect.
Okay. Um, thanks, Molly. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so we'll make sure there's a vote around the structure, Melissa. So we've got to sort of pull that out of just my update and make it its own standalone agenda item. I think that makes sense. Since we're at the top of the hour, I'm gonna kind of move quickly. The other things on the agenda are, and Molly, this will be pertinent to you. We've got a state advisory group and juvenile justice committee update and kind of agenda item around approving JCP plans, and then we'll get folks thoughts and or like, hey, here are the things we heard at this Coalition for Juvenile Justice Hill Day and annual conference. Any Molly, any quick thoughts from you? That's the second up since that's a
That
vote.
sounds good. Yep.
Great, great.
Yep, that sounds good. Yep.
Then we'll jump to a break. We want to then move to strategic plan adoption. We thought about doing this in March, but we moved it to June. Again, this is saying, hey, we've got the plan, we've got our strategies, we've got kind of prioritized activities. We've got these pieces. Let's adopt. We know this thing is, we may tinker and with the plan here and there, but it feels like we've got something ready to go, and I want to spend a little time giving folks a quick overview, but then ultimately voting to adopt the plan. We're using that word specifically, like adopting versus like a formal like
I think we were doing approval versus, was it approval versus adoption? I can't
no, I
recall.
think it was adoption versus
Adoption versus,
yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I think the thing that we'll share out a new draft. My goal is to get something out to the council by the end of next week, so about 2 weeks ahead of the council meeting, and it will look very similar to what we've last shared.
Yeah.
But as Brian said, I mean, something that I'm working on in there is really specifically saying this is a living plan. Like there's a process by which the plan can be updated in an ongoing way. I think one of the uses of that policy and strategy committee that I kind of envision is that that's a place where on a quarterly basis we're looking at the plan, looking at new input, giving providing opportunities for community feedback, et cetera. So we'll kind of talk about all that in the presentation leading up to that adoption vote.
Good. Thank you, Cord. Any questions, comments? No, I know we're 1 o'clock. Oh,
Yeah,
Molly, go.
it's 102, and I appreciate that. I really want to encourage us to talk less and listen more.
Yeah. Say what you mean, Molly.
I think it's fine to put it out there, but I don't know that I think support that you should be changing it or doing those kind of things. I think that's what the council should be doing and feeling empowered that they have the capacity to do that instead of it just being presented to them with the updates. I think just giving the high level and then letting time for conversation.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think, I hope and think in that committee space too, there's some more, because I think that there's ownership of the plan, I think is something we want to get to.
Exactly. That is exactly what I'm trying to get to is ownership.
Yeah. Then we'll move to an RFA update, just about RFAs that have been launched. No specific vote. Quick overview. We've launched our RFAs. We've done information sessions. We can announce deadlines. Don't know our budget, but our ultimate grant and aid budget. But when we get that, we won't have it. I doubt we'll have it in June, but but whatever we have, we'll be sure to share. Um, I'm working quickly here, working lunch. Wanted then to have a little more time and opportunity for conversation and again, because we got some new folks, probably doing this more just as a group around the table, and then for those who are virtual, we can involve them. But we've got some questions laid out around, what's exciting about this moment in youth work and grant making, what's concerning you or keeping you up at night, and how could mentorship be incorporated? We've heard from some of our younger um, folks over the years about like how might they be mentored and supported in their role as council members. Those of you who've been around for a while too can probably weigh in. So these are just some questions that we came up with that we thought would be a good lunch hour. I don't know, but it may not, it may be 30, 35 minutes, Melissa, when we're all said and done. I can't remember exactly how much time we'll have, but that's our basic plan for lunch. Then we'll move to a data reporting update. There were some questions that I think came out of our last meeting. I think we want to, again, keep this, well, sort of, Cord, remind me, I think this is a piece that we don't want to get, we want to hear from the council, don't get me wrong, but we just wanted to circle back since, we lost the power and there was all sorts of stuff. We're not going to put like spreadsheets in front of people because we don't want this to go like way into the weeds. But I think data and reporting are pieces that we just want to keep on the radar and have each committee. Actually, Juvenile Justice Committee talks at various points about data and reporting. We want our policy, we want each committee to actually be talking about data. And frankly, I didn't say this, I probably should have earlier, around like equity and our equity lens questions. Rather than having a separate thing focused on those, I think we've got tools, we've got information, and want to really have our committees having those pieces in their conversations. And we'll bring data to the council on a regular basis for broader conversation, but also really want to encourage that those conversations are happening in committees. And I think they're happening here and there, probably happening most in juvenile justice when it's as needed. So just a quick follow-up, just to say that there's that we haven't forgotten, or we know that things were a little bit all over the map as we had our meeting, that when the power went out. Since again, we're over time here, we'll move to committee updates, just to update on the youth engagement meeting, policy strategy, just wanted to try to work to get that off the ground. We may not have a bunch of updates here since we will have had the juvenile justice one earlier. But then we'd go to public comment, close and wrap. For those who are interested, we'd ask our friends at Northwest Youth Corps to do a tour around whenever we end, 2:15.
Brian, did I totally miss it? Did you already talk about the fact that we're having a youth engagement meeting, but not a youth committee meeting?
Yeah, I said that.
Sorry. Sorry.
That's right. All right. I mean, that's the draft agenda. You will, we can send this, well, you'll get the kind of high level agenda over the next couple of weeks, but then you'll get more updates from us as we kind of pull things together. And to Cord's point, like here's a draft of the plan so that you can look at that and review that. But that's what we got.
Thank you for pulling it together. I'm looking forward to being able to join in Eugene. I think all signs are clear for me to go to be there unless some emergency comes up during session.
That's good to hear, Parasa. Molly, can you make it down to Eugene, or what's your schedule look like?
I'm just coming from Eugene.
Are you today?
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, I was in Eugene the last 2 days. I don't know the answer. I'm headed out to Texas on the 13th.
Okay.
So I don't know the answer.
Literally the next day. Wow.
Yeah.
Totally hear you. We've got Gov to Gov out at Warm Springs on what is that, like the
The meeting is on the 10th.
10th, and then we've got our committee. So we'll have a link so that folks can participate virtually, but we'll get as much in-person participation as we can.
Yep.
Um,
We don't have any public guests today, so no public comments. I think we're ready to adjourn unless there's anything else.
I appreciate everybody's time. Molly, we'll see you next week in DC.
Yes, I will see you next Tuesday to fly.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Parasa.
much.
Thanks all so
Appreciate
much.
it.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care, everybody.